Casper and Dennis here for Submission Radio, proudly brought to you by Manscaped. Code Submission for 20% off. A day after UFC 293 with the one and only Eugene Bareman. Man, it still hasn't set in. What is it like the day after, knowing the fight went the way it did?
No, you're literally kind of right there. Like, it still hasn't really set in. It's good to face the music. I think you should. It's one thing to face the music when you win, but you should also face the music when you lose. Israel doesn't necessarily feel like he wants to do that yet, but he'll come around. So I'm kind of like taking the reins in that regard. So, kind of surreal. To lose a fight against like Pereira, where you know that things can turn on a dime, in a fight like this where we didn't take Sean lightly, but we thought we would have the tools to take Sean to do what's necessary to get a win over Sean, and then for him to cause an upset like that. What an achievement for him and his team, and respect and props must go to them. Eric and all of their team, all their training partners, coaches, managers. Yeah, well done to Sean and his team.
By the way, Casper didn't mention, but a great performance at the post-fight press conference from one Eugene Bareman, who will now be doing interviews and probably TV ads all over Australia and New Zealand. Have you had a chance to speak with Israel since the fight happened last night or maybe this morning? And sort of, if you have, what's the general vibe from him with this one compared to, say, the loss to Alex?
Look, we very quickly turned Israel's attention to the fact that 3 of his teammates had won, and that's a ploy. I did that intentionally because I wanted Israel to just be a little bit carefree, but not think so much about what happened. But he feels it. He knows that capability-wise, that was a fight that he could have won and should have won, and he didn't perform. Respect, like, you got to understand, when I say, when someone says, when a coach says, or anybody who knows the sport says they had an off night or he didn't perform, that doesn't mean, that's not an excuse. That means they're acknowledging that the other person made them not perform. That's what you're saying. Like, so you don't just go in one night and just not perform. It's all for a reason, and most of the time that reason is the opponent does certain things that make you not perform. So can't take nothing away from Sean. Like, this is was he the most unlikely champion ever, even surpassing Michael Bisping? Some would say yes, and that's just such a brilliant story for him, and the rematch will be the end of that story.
Take us into sort of the cornering yesterday, and sort of, you mentioned how like you guys couldn't really connect. What exactly happened? And I guess that's a fascinating thing, right? Not be able to connect. It almost felt like you guys were fighting 5 fights, trying to sort of get that one back each round.
You're not wrong. Like, no, we didn't change things round to round. We just made small adjustments. Also, communication, you communicate the same thing but slightly differently, and fighters will pick up on it a little better. So we changed the way we articulated it. Then when things weren't working, we had several other plans that we were shuffling to, and we weren't, those, Israel wasn't able to find some freedom with those options as well. Then he started He emptied the bag of tricks a little bit too early, so he showed Sean a few too many things too early in the round. And the way that this level of fighting is you don't want to show your bag of tricks too early. You want to set them up and finesse them. And when you throw one move and it closes the door on that move, then that segues to the next opening. That's kind of how we plan things. But he showed it all too early. And it was just getting him off that, and then it was like, wow, as he showed everything to Sean, and Sean's made the adjustments. It was just a very stagnated night where we couldn't see eye to eye on things, and we couldn't find the thing that Israel needed to break through. You have nights like this sometimes. The thing is, what makes these fighters the best in the world and these teams the best in the world is because they don't have these nights often.
Yeah.
But I mean, we had one, and we had one because Sean and his team, they were just better tonight. They were better than us. Like, I just can't really sugarcoat that. Yeah.
What did you think of Sean's actual game plan? He kind of stuck to the basics in there. What did you think of his actual performance?
Yeah, and because, like you mentioned, it looked like he wanted to experience and see all the tricks and break that distance down to experience the shots early. He even mentioned going into this fight, he likes to feel the power, he wants to feel what happens, and then he starts to unload. So in a lot of ways, him closing down that distance and staying in that space, trying to get all that early and out of the way so he can sort of get going as well.
He did what a lot of fighters aren't willing to do. And he put himself in the heat. He put himself in the heat so that he could get off his own heat. Every fighter talks about this. And the ones that do are brave enough to try and do it, they've been punished by Israel badly, which is part of the reason why a lot of them don't do it. Sean, however, you have this one chance in your life to do this. This is your one opportunity. I said this pre-fight. I said, if there's one guy that's going to come through the heat, get Israel to open up in front of him, it's going to be this guy. He seems like that guy. And sure enough, he was. Israel couldn't find the button this time. He couldn't find, even the accumulated damage wasn't good enough for Israel to make any segue on Sean. He just couldn't find the button. He couldn't find the right positions to punish Sean. So it ended up being a bit of a long night for Israel.
I feel like Israel probably takes losses better than anyone, and he kind of proved that after the Pereira loss, the way he came back. We were speaking about this yesterday. I felt like Israel didn't really owe anybody his time afterwards at the presser. He did show up, made a quick announcement, and then he had better things to do sort of with his life. And then he took over. But sort of in the grand scheme of things, how do you think this loss potentially affects Israel's legacy?
Look, I don't think it. That's the thing when you're talking about legacy and stuff. It sometimes get tainted if you fight. Like, a lot of fighters taint their legacy because they fight on too long, and then there's a recency bias where people think of those fights and they forget all the massive amount of work that they've done. You know, like Roberto Duran, for instance, one of the best fighters of all time, but he fought way past his time, right? So people have a recency bias and they remember that. I don't think it affects his legacy too much. What affects your legacy too much is if you end up cheating and stuff. Like if you end up being a drugs cheat or something like that, and then people are like, wow, man, how long was he cheating for? His entire legacy. So he hasn't, I don't think it affects it too much. I think this sets up another epic part of his story, for the rematch. Yeah.
I think it needs to be said that the frequency that Israel fights isn't common in the UFC. And when you fight so frequently and take so many opportunities and go out there so much, once or twice you might lose, but there's a lot of respect in the fact that he fights so much, he puts himself out there, he keeps a schedule that most UFC champions have not in the past. And I think that's something that gets ignored. I just want to quickly go back to the fight because I have to ask this huge, a lot of people wondering if there's an injury or something wrong with Israel in that fight. Obviously, when you watch the exchanges, it just looked like he was maybe a second off certain shots. He was just a centimeter off the distance, a little bit with some of the shots. He looked maybe a little bit slower in certain exchanges. So people are wondering if there was some kind of health issue or reason, or maybe even overtraining or anything going into this fight that you can sort of point to as well when looking at the performance.
Let me say this. I'm not going to comment on that at all. And that is like that. When teams and coaches and fighters, they do that, it annoys me because every fighter gets injured and every fighter has injuries going on. And at the end of the day, if you walk in there with an injury, you still feel confident that you can win the fight. So in that regard, he was in full, perfect health. People that I trust, people that know the sport, and there's not many people in the world that know the sport.
Us three.
There's us.
Maybe just you.
Yeah, but there's a very, very small percentage, less than 1%. they thought there was something off with Israel a little bit. That I couldn't see because I was too involved. I was too in it. Sometimes you need an outside perspective looking in. I couldn't see what they've seen, but I trust their opinion. I trust what they see. And I never saw that. That's the honest truth. I couldn't see what they have shared with me cage side. I had no idea. And I'm like, well,
This is during the fight, or?
No, this was after. This was post-fight. So people I trust, like well-known coaches, very smart people, have told me that they saw certain things in Israel that I couldn't see cage side. But I trust your opinion, and then now I have to go back and analyze the fight myself and have a look at it. And cage side, I want to give all the credit to Sean and his team and Eric and the other coaches that were in his corner. I never saw some of these things that some of the people that I trust seen. You can't take nothing away from Eric and Sean, man. What a crazy story. I travelled home after that post-fight press conference with Ash and Tim, the managers, and I. The whole ride, it was like a 30-minute ride in silence. And then about 20 minutes through the ride, I just broke the silence and I just was like, how the fuck did that happen? and then we just all started laughing, and then we all started just laughing and just giving each other shit, and we're like, this is a crazy sport, man. This is the craziness of the sport. What a story. What a epic story. Like Sydney, UFC, we delivered. What a fantastic main event. We didn't win, we were on the receiving end, but man, what a fantastic sport this is for everybody to enjoy, all the fans out there to enjoy. Yeah.
Just on those things that you might need to address now, sort of how much of it is going back to the drawing board, how major are those changes, and how would that affect, say, the timeline?
Nah, look, man, me and my coaches were so thorough. And we think the things that we've seen are still there. We just couldn't get Israel to see the same thing. So we have to address that. Mm. Sean's holes are still there, will still be there, I feel. It was more the execution of the strategy. And we've got to look at why Israel wasn't able to execute and why we weren't able to make some of the subtle changes and see them. And you can't put all the blame on Israel. You got to, we're a team. We're a team. If Israel loses, we all lost. That's how we treat it. So you can't put all the blame on Israel. It was us as well. We didn't have the best performance, we felt, as a corner. We definitely didn't have the best performance. So we need to look at the whole overall picture. But we also need to go to another level in the rematch, which is such a difficult thing. And like I already alluded to, when you feel like you leave no stone unturned, and then somehow you've got to find more, nicks and crannies where you think you've already covered everything. But we'll do it. We did it for Pereira. I've done it several other times with other high-level fighters. Like, you just be super, super diligent. You just get in front of the laptop, get in front of the computer screen. You get your coaches together. Instead of getting together once a week to watch video, you get them together 3 times a week. Instead of messaging twice a week each other in our coaching group, we message each other every day. We instead of 2 or 3 coaches being there for half the week and the other 2 coming in, we're just all there every session. We're all there, watching every little detail, every little single movement.
This was for Alex for the rematch?
This is what I mean. This is what you have to do. You have to just, if there's anything you left unturned, you just have to take care of. That's the only way to get it to another level. And we're just going to put all our effort and all our every ounce of intellect, every hour, every waking hour, we're going to direct towards this rematch in Israel. And this will be a good story for Israel.
I know a lot of people are like, hey, what happens next? Do you give another contender a shot? Do you move the division along? Do you do the rematch? From your perspective, what's the argument to do the immediate rematch? And then also just quickly, do you feel like this sort of your comments in the past about Dricus and stuff like that, do you think it rings even truer now? Because you did say, like, you basically never know what's going to happen in this sport.
Look, you can. I'm sure the South African fans and the Dricus fans talked a lot of shit on me then. And I don't read your comments because I never read comments. That's the golden rule in the sport. But you can laugh. I'm laughing to the bank now because now Dricus don't know where he is on the landscape. Now anything could happen. Now comes out, gets a good win. Paulo Costa gets a good win. You think they're going to give the next shot to Dricus, who's been sitting on the sidelines doing nothing? So it just goes to show that what I said was true. If you're not willing to fight for an injury and you're sitting too comfortable thinking you're just going to get the next title shot, you don't know the sport. Your team hasn't been in the sport long enough. They're not smart enough to think this. They can't manipulate the UFC. They're a new team to the UFC. They're not a veteran team like my team. So, anyway, enough said about that. What was the next part of your question?
Just the argument for the immediate rematch.
That this is the biggest star in the sport. That's the biggest star in the sport right now, arguably. Top three, I mean, you can count Conor out because Conor don't participate in the sport anymore. So who you got? You got Jones and you got the two best buddies, Jones and Adesanya.
New best friends.
New best friends,
yeah.
Jones and Adesanya. When you're this big in the sport, what argument is there? Well, if anybody has an argument, put their fighter forward. If their fighter does as much for the company as Israel and makes as much money for the company as Israel does, then put your argument forward. But the fact is that, Israel's been a long-serving member for the sport. He for this company. He makes this company a lot of money. And he's gone out of his way for this company, so he deserves a rematch. I can't really, if there's an argument against that, then there is. I won't know about it because I won't read about it.
Yeah.
And I think as well, people are wondering what that rematch would look like as well. You mentioned that you and the coaches want to go back, look at the footage, figure the stuff out. But then I know yesterday you also said, hey, we'll do this rematch in a week's time. We'll do this rematch soon. So ideally, what is the timeline that you're looking at? Because if you want to review the footage, leave no stone unturned, but at the same time, sort of capitalize on the fans really wanting to see this happen again, get back in there. What's the ideal timeline for you to sort of get this rematch underway?
Realistically, end of the year, start of next year. Realistically, I mean, I said 1 week because that was more me alluding to that. I think the game plan's still there. It still exists. I think that there's some mental things there that we can quickly adjust in a week and then get back in there and we could see a completely different fight. Whether Sean's able to impose that those mental blocks that he put on Israel, I don't know if he'll be able to do that again. So that's all I was alluding to. We can turn that over real quick. Pereira, we couldn't have turned over in a week. We needed time. There was things there that we needed to adjust. There was details there we needed to look at. Realistically, end of the year, start of next year. Time is what good coaches, good teams need. They need time to develop things, and they got a really good team too. And it's not like they're going to be looking at the fight. They're going to look at that fight and they're going to see the same things that we see. So the rematch is intriguing.
That's right, Eugene. With time, I just really quickly want to bring up as well, everybody's talking about UFC 300, and you guys have created history with CKB doing the 6 fights this past weekend. I know you want to do the Auckland card, which will be historic as well. But what would it mean for you to have some of your fighters on UFC 300? Because we've already got Volko speaking a little bit about wanting to be on UFC 300. Israel's already said he'll let Volko main event that. He's happy to co-main with that. What would that mean to you as a coach to be able to be a part of such a big card? Maybe get a few of the other guys on the card as well from CKB and Freestyle.
UFC 300, there's something about those round numbers, right? So UFC 300 seems like a massive one. Do you know when that's scheduled for?
Maybe April.
Yeah,
possibly.
April. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe the middleweight division has to move before then, you know. I would love for Israel to fight on UFC. Would love to fight Strickland on UFC 300. That'd be massive. Whether the middleweight division can be held up that long, I'm not sure. I think Volko or Israel should be on that card. I think if you're talking about fighters in the last 3 or 4 years that have, put a footprint down on the scene, and they've brought something different to the scene, they've brought a different level of skill that hasn't been seen before in the sport. You're talking about, guys like Volko, Israel. You're even talking about guys like Khabib and stuff who's retired. They just bring something different, a different level, and you have to have these marquee guys on a card like 300. So I hope we have someone. I'm just not sure if it'll be Israel or Volko or maybe both.
Yeah. Well, you got a lot of guys also that are sort of climbing the ranks and like had great performances yesterday. You mentioned at the start, the 3 boys that sort of did really well: Carlos Olberg, Kevin Gisette, and then Tyson Pedro. What was sort of the standout performance for you? What was something that you were really happy with that you guys put a lot of effort into in camp and then saw that executed nicely?
Carlos Olberg.
Yeah.
Carlos Olberg.
He's coming to his own.
Yeah, and I spoke a little bit about this, if we lose, I don't like to talk about injuries. I think it takes away from the other person's win. But if we win, it's fine. He literally couldn't walk on his leg when he got off the plane to get here in Sydney, and I was like, mate, this is crazy. And we couldn't even identify the injury. We thought it was gout.
Oh.
And then it ended. Now we've found out through the blood test that it's got nothing to do with gout. So we currently now don't even know what the injury is.
Oh wow! How's his leg now? Any better or still crap?
He was in a brace, I believe, at the post-fight presser. Yeah.
So the gout medication made it better,
right?
Enough for him to fight, but the gout medication we gave him because we thought it was gout. It wasn't gout.
Yeah.
Something completely different. We did blood tests. So he was in a very mentally, he was in a very shifty place. And I had to keep a close eye on him. He's mentally a very strong person, but even him, I felt like he was fighting a battle. Monday, not so good. Tuesday, not so good. Wednesday, slight improvement. Thursday, ever so slight improvement. Friday, we're weighing in, still limping. I'm like, mate, this is crazy. And so,
did you know that he would even make it to the fight, or was it very touch and go throughout the week?
We were always going to fight.
Right.
No one on my team would pull out in the last week. So we were always going to fight. It was just that mental battle that he played with himself. He wasn't able to do the trainings. That wears on you mentally. He come out there with that injury still existing, but we got it good enough that he can move around and stuff. And then to go out there and beat a dangerous, underrated, dangerous opponent, a real dangerous, underrated opponent with a record that doesn't reflect how good he is. So that was my standout performance. But I was happy, man. Tyson was incredible, and Kevin in his debut against a guy that they had some big raps on as a bit of a brawler and stuff, and Kevin was able to control him. Those guys, I couldn't be happier for those guys, and we celebrated their wins last night. So. Yeah, very happy.
I think we all celebrated their wins last night.
You boys were a bit dusty.
And by the way, the Pleasure Man went down, but he came. Hopefully, he comes back up and has another turn. I'm sure Eugene Bareman, a big fan of the nicknames. As we wrap up, man, this rematch, people are wondering, what's it going to look like? What kind of outcome it's going to have? How different is it going to be to the first one? There's a million little things that you mentioned, stones that need to be sort of left unturned before you walk in there. But when you sort of do think about this rematch, does anything stand out to you about any differences or anything that fans can sort of expect that spring to you straight away compared to what we saw yesterday?
Israel has to inflict more pain and damage on this man. And what that's going to mean is we have to find a way to do it and minimize how much harms we kind of put in front of him. Because when you try to hurt someone, the cost of that is that you're putting yourself in harm's way for a little bit. And our job is to find a way where you can stay just inside enough to inflict some proper damage, but still mitigate the risk. And so you're going to see a fight. You're going to see a real good fight. And an intriguing rematch against a great opponent and a great team. And if this is the end of the interview, then I want to congratulate Sean and Eric. And yeah, I'm looking forward to doing battle again.
You look excited by this challenge. I think...
This is like, my man, like I would love to still be a fighter, but I'm just getting too old. And if you can't fight, then, and you love going to battle, and you just love just going up against other men and just seeing who's the best, and you're too old and you can't do it anymore, then this is the next best thing. Put your intellect up against the other team's intellect and send your guy out there and come up with a strategy and a game plan and see who comes up with a better strategy and game plan and who's better on the night. And it's just it's just exciting. Exciting from my perspective, exciting for the fans, exciting for Israel and Sean. So it's going to be cool.
We're excited to see how you guys tackle the puzzle. The return is always the most exciting. Thanks so much for your time. You'd really appreciate it.
And congratulations on a big night yesterday. 3 wins, 3 out of 6. Impressive stuff. And a lot of new blood from CKB taking over. Very excited to see what's next as well for all the boys.
Wicked. Thank you, lads. Good to be here.